Welcome, beloveds. Welcome to this week's craniosacral video, where I have three different, let's say, ideas I'm going to share, and then the fun will be in trying to see what connects them all. These are just some of the thoughts I've been having or have been visiting me, observations that I've been visiting. This week, so I'm going to weave them together into this craniosacral video that I entitled Be Your Path and the Strong Force Math in Eyes. So let's start off with being your path. So people often talk about finding your path, and I really want to shift the language around to being your path and how to be your path more. Kind of remembering you don't have to find that external, but you can just listen more to the internal, which cranial sacral can help with. And a part of being your path is slowing down enough to understand all the relationships that you are. And cranial sacral can help with that. I often describe cranial sacral as having a tea date with the body that you live with. You're just setting aside time to be able to touch in with that relationship. And when we are our own gifts, I think that's when we can have a more liberated world, each of us having access to the resources and encouragement to be, share, feel, and nourish the gifts that we are, and then get back to trading our gifts, right? And shifting out of this harmful capitalism. And so, with being your path, and shifting culture, I want to remind everyone that we can all shift culture, not just the people who have the most money, but cranial sacral can help people wait. And I find that if a person is more embodied, then they can wait and shift culture in moments that come to them. Remember, instead of trying to find your path, be your path. Let it come to you in a way. And so, an example of this is I was sharing a conversation with some people, and we are talking about tarot cards, and it got brought up, like I shared that there's a whole tarot cards deck of cats and how creative it is to see the the archetypes played out in cat world. And someone said, oh yeah, and that also would be really great if someone's spirit animal is a cat. And so I grounded, and also, like, my heart was really open of, like, we're all trying to learn how to be better relatives with each other. And so that really helped me choose my wording of saying, like, oh hey, actually, thank you for bringing up that wording of spirit animal, because it reminds me that I'm trying to practice finding other phrases, since that's a very specific cultural phrase, a cultural meaning. It has like one meaning, and isn't this like umbrella term, that I'm trying to find ways to play with that joy of connection with animals and getting personal symbols in our life, and yet not appropriating a culture to do that. And so I said some phrases I've been practicing. I was saying, like, oh, an animal that repeatedly shows up for you, an animal that travels with you, an animal that represents you, an animal that, yeah, comes into your life a lot, an animal you're drawn to, an animal that speaks to you, an animal whose characteristics you feel you embody or you want to learn from. So then we shifted into talking about, like, oh, so do you have an animal like that? Do you notice? Because sometimes I'll be walking with friends, and we might be talking, and then they'll suddenly say, like, oh, did you see that fish, that fox, that bird? And I'll be like, no. And they'll be like, oh, it's like right over there. And I'll be like, I don't see this. And they'll be like, oh, I guess it's gone now or something. And I'll be like, yeah, that was for you. And so I do believe that, we have life relationships. Life speaks to us in many ways. There are many languages to remember, to learn, when being in relationship with life. And so, yes, there are animal relationships as well, animal messages as well. And may we all be able to practice how to talk about that in a way that, again, doesn't dilute a culture, doesn't harm a culture, doesn't take away and dilute the meaning of a term for people who are trying to revitalize their culture and trying to find their people still, right? And so we don't need to be diluting, muddying the water when people are still trying to find their people because of genocide and genocidal practices. Um, and so that's an example of what can happen when a person is present, right? And when we do away with the idea that the only way to shift culture is by having lots of money, but we can all actually shift culture by waiting and being our path instead of like exhausting ourselves trying to find our path. And that's something too I find Craniosacral really helps with, and that's getting rid of the noise of cultural conditioning, of oppressive conditioning, of oppressive habit momentum energy that can carry us away and are supposed to give us these shortcuts because we're being made to be too tired to think for ourselves and feel out moments for ourselves and sense subtle differences for ourselves. It's like, okay, prepackaged shortcuts. And a lot of us don't even realize we're doing it because we're so tired. Um, and so I want to remind people that craniosacral or other practices, if whatever helps a person be in connection, um, can really help quiet that noise. Because I find when approaching what my gifts are, me externalizing my life path, a lot of noise can happen of reasons I should feel guilty about being my unique gifts, reasons I should hide my unique gifts, reasons that I'm a bad person for this choice. I'm a stupid woman. I'm a silly girl. Again, like or fear, whatever fear messages, whatever guilt messages, whatever noise says like there's a reason someone shouldn't go towards something. I really do feel the wound of patriarchy, right? Like there's a lot of wounds for masculinity as well as femininity, as well as the beyond the binaries of that some people might want to approach something, but they've been told so deeply, like that's for girls, that's for boys. So I find cranial sacral can really help get rid of that noise, or at least see it better and then follow. Wait, where's the source of this messaging? Is it from my heart? Do I want to keep carrying it, or is this from media? Schooling is such an indoctrination system. Schooling was set up to make people more obedient people, not to educate people. And it's actually a really good book I might be able to find. Let me make a little note. At the end, I can share a book title someone just shared me with about the education system. And if not this video, next video. And I know sometimes I need to get better about actually like re-adding something into another video when I'm spontaneously talking. But this is important about the education system. So I could see it being its own topic. For now, maybe just trust me on that one. Or do your own research looking for book titles that go into the origins of the education system. At least for no other book but Sand Talk also talks about the education system as well, and connections with Germany and Hitler as well. So train of thoughts. So cranial sacral and practices that are rooted in connection can really help quiet that noise, so a person doesn't have so much fear, doubt, guilt about being their gifts, being their path, because that can just so readily cloud people's minds. All this noise of reasons I shouldn't even try, right? Reasons I shouldn't even try, I think, will be the first clue that there's oppressive conditioning at play here, because it's like, why not try and feel it out for yourself, get that embodied information yourself of like, well, let me go here, talk to that person myself and see what information body is telling me, so I can get that embodied information for myself. So that could be a clue, like I said, whatever pushes down that I shouldn't even try. The best parts of life I find are when I'm playful and just trying something like, hey, let me um, email the manager of a band and be like, hey, could you maybe like ask if the band would want to like call up one of my family members for their birthday or something? Like, why not try? So another example I'll give about of being your gifts is how I practice craniosacral, which is what a lot of these videos are about. But I really want to encourage all of you to find your voice in the craniosacral world and to be your unique gifts. But one of the ways that I am entrusting myself is I like to incorporate what I find interesting, what's piquing my interest in a week into the craniosacral world and into craniosacral sessions, because I think some practitioners and I've done this myself too, especially when I've maybe had many sessions or a while in between sessions, like different reasons I might um, repeat the same holds a lot, especially because I find if I'm seeing a lot of people for the first time, I'll often have my like first time holds a lot, and then those are the ones I'm like doing for a while, and it helps to weave in my other interests to help me remember where else in the body might need attention. So I tend to really love opening at shoulders. I think touching in with diaphragm can be really nice for like core awareness, as well as a lot of patterns present themselves in our breath and how people might hold their breath or not. So I'll touch in with diaphragm, or I'll do the cranial sacral hold. I'll hold a lot of backs of heads, like shoulders, since I'm already up here. Some head hold, diaphragm for middle, and then closing at ankles. And I just want to remind myself of like seeing joints and not just organs, not just these top, middle, bottom patterns. And so I'll weave into sessions some of my interests that help me open my mind up to some other holds. And so I really appreciate thinking a lot about the tiny, tiny, tiny everywhere, like corks. So there are molecules. Think of like, water is like oxygen, hydrogen. Molecules are atoms that are sharing electrons, covalent bonding. And smaller than the atom is the inside just one atom we have the negatively charged electron circling about, and the positively charged proton, and the neutron in the middle. That's the nucleus of an atom, is proton, neutron. And inside them, a proton is made up of two up quarks, one down quark, and a neutron is made up of two down quarks, one up quark. And quarks, I believe, can't be pulled apart any smaller. That's the smallest. And if it's the smallest, that means maybe it's energy, vibration. That was written in the book Science of the Sacred. And so I really love remembering, like I can touch in, maybe visualize atoms, quarks, the smallest unit, vibration anywhere. So that's something I can create a hold about for anywhere on body if I'm wanting to switch up some of my hold. If I want to incorporate some of what I'm learning, I can do that. But also, in a recent video, YouTube video I watched, is called "The Math of How Atomic Nuclei Stay Together is Surprisingly Beautiful" by Highly Entropic Mind. And this person is so cute and playful. I clicked on their YouTube channel, and how they describe themselves, or their page for the highly entropic mind, is this highly entropic mind has a lot of thoughts bouncing around, and sometimes one of them gains escape velocity. So I think that's really funny. And I really appreciate their video. It's a really funny video that taught me a lot as well. So if you're interested in physics, and if you're interested in understanding the math, the symbolism, the science of life, this person was really wonderful and enjoyable to listen to. And what they were teaching about is this really interesting idea of math sequences in multiple parts of life, how certain math shows up in multiple parts of life. And so about like 35 minutes into the video, I really appreciated this one line that said, the reason the RGB, the red, green, blue color space has a similar math to the strong force is because because we have three kinds of color receptors in our eyes, and the combination of those also describes the colors in quarks. So let me pause a little bit and explain some of that a little bit more. I'm realizing I jumped ahead a touch. So the strong force. Electrons on the outside, electrically negatively charged, but the electromagnetic field is what's keeping them in that sphere. Protons positively charged, neutrons neutral. What's keeping them together of the nucleus? That's where you're getting the title of that video, right? What's keeping them together, because the protons should be repelling each other. The neutrons are just neutral. So what's keeping them together? The electrons are negative charge, so they're um, not coming near the positively charged protons. So what is keeping these protons and neutrons together for the nucleus of an atom? And researchers say, well, it must be some force. Let's call it the strong force. It must be really strong to be keeping them together. So it's called the strong force. So that's what I mean in that quote of how the math of the strong force and the math of the RGB color spectrum have similar math, because we have three color receptors in our eyes, and with quarks being the smallest unit, they can't be pulled apart, and they are the smallest, but they have different forces as well, different characteristics, such as, like I said, some are up, some are down, which isn't exactly like the orientation in space, but they also have color, which I don't think is actually like color. Maybe it's just a name for a force because it maybe behaves the same way as color. Again, I'm like new to this, so look up more if you want to learn more, but there are different colors, red, green, and blue, for the quarks to have certain math play out, knowledge being learned, then create certain math sequences that then it's like, well, for this to work, there needs to be something else here. And that's sort of how it seems like some of these rememberings come about, some of these stories come about. And what's really interesting is that what was being discovered about quarks with having color was happening in the 1960s. That's the same time that there was the invention of colored TVs. So when I say stories are important, it's true, right? When I say being your gifts are important, it's true, right? Having groups of people from different fields, or having people who have varying different types of knowledge, can learn ways to describe or solve problems than people who they might be able to see more than people who are like very, very hyper specialized. So that's why, again, I say, like, be your gifts, be your path. You never know where that knowledge might actually help solve some problems or bring some understandings about life. In seemingly unrelated ways. So since there are three color receptors in our eyes, and there are three different types of quarks with the colors of red, green, and blue, the math that needs to be figured out is like, oh, actually, the math of the color spectrum, similar to the math in the nuclei of an atom. And so for a hold for craniosacral, if people need some inspiration, I am coming up with this hold, this sequence for a craniosacral session could be, if someone wants to touch in with the very, very vibration of an area or a person, maybe start with an eye hold. And since eyes can be like so sensitive, a person could have their own eyes over their have their own hands over their eyes, and then the practitioner can put their hands over that person's hands. So a practitioner can bring their hands over somebody's eyes, find a comfortable hold, or a person who's receiving can put their own hands over their eyes, and then practitioner can put their hands over the person who's receiving's hands. Could be a hold, a way to touch in with the awareness of the three color receptors in human eyes, and then touch in with another area of body to touch in with quarks, and just touch in with how the very vibration of a person is doing, how the cells, the atoms are doing. Could be a really meaningful hold. I haven't done this yet before, but like I said, pulling in my different interests are helping me create creative ideas for holds, for sessions, for ways to access certain areas and certain themes of a person, of a life. Because I say all the time that everyone is an interesting, fascinating person if asked the right question. That questions can be keys, and so that can be true for every area of body as well. Every part of a person can have so much to share if approached in the way that that area likes to be approached in, likes to be communicated with. And that's a way that I am being my path, a way that I create the sessions that I do, and weave in the knowledge of like whatever's interesting me at the time. And sometimes then it'll just happen to be that the next person who I end up getting booked with needs some of the knowledge I was like just researching for these videos really a lot of times and stuff. So that can happen, of like how to prepare, what to do while you're waiting for getting all those clients, or for a session, or for life paths to unfold. It's like, remember, you can be your life path. How are you preparing, so you have that knowledge already? So I just wanted to again remind you all to be your unique practitioners, be your gifts, and if you'd be interested in having the session I described, reach out to me. Like I said, I haven't tried it before, but I think it could be a very beautiful session, a really meaningful session, and a very, like, I guess, me session in a way, of when I come up with these creative different combinations of holds, or what I visualize when having the holds. So thank you for staying with me as I talked about being your path, about craniosacral, helping to quiet the noise, how craniosacral can help with awareness pausing, of that if some thoughts even saying like, why even try something, that might be a clue that there's some conditioning there, because why not try yourself so you can get that body knowledge yourself. So be your path. Um, Craniosacral can help quiet the noise so you can go towards your path, so you can be your path. And then um, remembering that we can all shift culture by being our gifts, by being our path, and by waiting, instead of like the messages of we have to like go out all the time, like searching for our path. If we just let ourselves be embodied, we wait, the moments that need our unique touch and our ability to shift culture, shape culture, will just appear. Like I gave that example of a teaching moment where I was trying to warmly offer a way of practicing how to talk differently about spirit animals, and not culturally appropriate that term, instead talk about animals that a person's drawn to, or that has meaning for them, a meaning making animal or something. How we can be creative in shaping culture by shaping language, in a way that then gets to honor a culture, support a culture, instead of dilute a culture, or harm a culture and a people. And then I went into the physics. Again, that video is the math of how atomic nuclei stay together surprisingly beautiful by highly entropic mind. And the quote that really, really resonated with me was, the reason that the RGB color space has a similar math to the strong force is because we have 3 kinds of color receptors in our eyes, and the combination of those 3 describes the math of quarks, which is called SU3. But a lot of this person's video as well would say, like, I'm gonna say some terms, but some of these terms themselves need whole videos on their own. So that's why hopefully I shared a little bit of information about what the strong force is. It's the force that keeps the nuclei together in an atom, and that inside the proton and neutron of the nucleus, there are quarks, and there are 3, and there are 3 colors, and we have 3 color receptors in our eyes, and that the math of both helps with bring the understanding to both. And so thank you for coming along for that ride. Thank you for practicing together. I just identify as a practitioner, which just means I'm someone who practices again and again how body lives relationships, because I practice craniosacral. I just want to thank you all for sharing this moment. I hope this week feels like your favorite song is dancing alongside you, and I hope you're all drinking lots of water and that people everywhere are having access to clean water. So let's do what we can to share stories and news about who doesn't have access to clean water, how we can get them clean access to water. Maybe that's something I'll share right now, is that Rights of Mississippi River just posted that despite owning rights of Colorado River, tribes largely cut off from accessing water. So it's still happening that people, there's an inequality in access to clean water. And here in the Northern Hemisphere, it's hot, and people need water. And so I just want to remind people that that's still a need. And if you're able to have clean drinking water, mineral water, water that is medicine for you and health for you, please do remember to have that this week and this summer. And then let's do what we can to make sure everyone has access to that. So thank you so much. And as always, I'm grateful to the Cultural Wellness Center that helps make these craniosacral videos possible. I'm so grateful to be a part of a group of people who lives the practice and belief that for a person to be healthy, they need to have access to community, a sense of belonging, have access to their traditional foods and traditional ways. And I just really am grateful when I'm around people who know that connection is health, and has conversations around that. So thank you so much. Like I said, I hope this week feels like your favorite song is dancing alongside you, and thank you for practicing together.